What is up, everybody, and welcome back to day 4 of the 5 days of color grading, where I'm going to be giving you tips and tricks every single day of this week on how to better your color grading and how to make better looking images. Today I'm going to be showing you a simple way on how to get a vintage film look. And make sure to stay to the end of this video because once again I have another surprise for you. So let's hop into the computer and get started. So I've actually created my power grade already, and I'm actually just going to work backwards and show you what I've done with each node and how I've gotten this result. So let's deactivate all of our nodes first. So this is the footage that we started off with, and the first thing that we added is a color space transform node. Check out the first video in this series if you want to learn how to properly use color space transform. So we have our color space transform here, and we're just going to activate it. And since our footage is S-Log3, we're going to be transforming S-Log3 into Rec 709. So from there, I actually jumped to the end of our node tree and I added a Rec 709 Kodak 2383 LUT. And to add that LUT, you can simply right click on your footage, go down to LUTs, go to Film Looks, and select Rec 709 2383, and specifically for me, I did D60. Now we're going to activate that look, and this is the result we get, but we're not done yet. Now we're going to jump back to the beginning of the node tree and start doing things in order. So our first node is a simple denoise node. So I have my denoise set to 3 frames and my luma and chroma set to 6.2. And of course that might vary depending on how noisy your footage is, but this is like a happy medium. From there we messed with exposure, and of course our shadow was a little bit flat, so if I activate that, you can see that we used lift, gamma, and gain to just lessen the contrast of the overall image. From there I added a white balance node. Now I didn't really need a white balance node specifically for this footage. I was kind of happy with how it is there, but if your footage is really skewing towards blue or really skewing towards orange, you're going to want to add a white balance node after the exposure node, and you can just mess with the temp slider, so you can bring it up or bring it down depending on the needs of your footage. So for the next 2 nodes, I actually broke them into parallel nodes. So one is for color and one is for skin correction. Color, of course, being the creative color that you want of your footage, and skin correction being correcting that skin back to a more neutral tone. So let's activate those. So for the color, I wanted it to be more orange, so I pushed the gain towards orange, and I also slightly pushed the lift towards orange too. And I also pushed the lift towards cyan just to bring out the orange in the shadows a little bit, because this is what it looks like before and this is what it looks like with the lift. So it just adds a little bit more neutrality to the image. So in the other half of the parallel node, I added a skin correction node, and this is just neutralize the face a little bit, bring up a little bit more of the reds instead of it being a little bit too orange, and I'll show you how I did that. So instead of using qualifiers, I actually used hue versus hue and hue versus saturation. And I also have a previous video all about this technique and how to properly use it. But for hue versus hue and sat versus sat, I pretty much just highlighted the skin, I brought out these points, and then started adjusting the middle point to a more neutral spot. And then I did the same for hue versus hue. And that's how I got this before and this after. Now there's 2 other important things that we need to add to this image, and one is halation and the other is grain. And so I add this after my CST node. So let's activate our halation, and you see it's giving a nice soft glow in all of the highlighted areas. We can check out the parts that it's actually activating right here. And so for the grain, what I used was a 16mm 250D, and I just increased the grain size slightly till it aligned with the texture, so about 0.7. And just like that, we have our simple film footage. Now the best part about this node tree that we made is that this can be easily changed to adjust to any footage that you have. For example, I have this red footage here, and all I have to do is copy this over. I'm just going to select the red footage, then right click on our Sony footage, and then press apply grade. Now all I have to do is go to CST, transfer this Sony S-Log3 into red wide gamma and red log film, and then we just start to mess with the exposure. So let me bring up the midtones, bring up the shadows a little bit, and you already see that it's starting to look beautiful. Just have to readjust for the exposure, and then I can say, hey, do you know what? I don't want it to be orange. I want it to be a little bit different. I want it to maybe be a little bit blue. All I have to do is touch the color. So I'm going to go to color. I'm going to bring back the gain, bring it a little bit more blue, take the shadows and bring it down a little bit towards green just to take out that cyan. And there we go. We have a beautiful looking vintage look on a completely different piece of footage. And I also have another red video right here that I can just apply it. And again, There we go. Now, you know that I don't like it when you have to do work, so this power grade will be available down in the description for completely free. Just drag and drop it onto your footage, change the color space transform node, and adjust your exposure, white balance, and color accordingly. So click the link down in the description, download this power grade, and have fun creating beautiful images.